Okay. Carry on.
Carry on. Okay, welcome to the KYD special homeschooling edition. We do not feel like we should be the authority on this subject.
Right. In 4.5 years, we've never done a video like this.
Yes. But this could be our chance to go out on the road or to use this opportunity to transfer our jobs remote, and then that gives us a little window to travel with our family when, of course, it's safe to do so.
And we've been getting a lot of emails from even our friends in, let's just say, sticks and bricks.
Yes.
Considering homeschooling because they're not entirely thrilled with how their school is kind of segueing back into kids returning to school, so they're thinking, well, I'm not going to do that. So now they're open to this idea. So we thought this was a good time to do this video.
Yes, and in no way is this saying, you should definitely homeschool, don't send your kids back. We're sending one of our kids back to school. We're super excited for him. He's thrilled. So anyway, but it's only because this is kind of an uncertain time.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we get this weird set of circumstances, we can find something really cool in them and make it work for us.
Okay, so before Trish dives in, because this is going to be mostly Trish, a couple things. One is, we do these videos because now we have this resource that when Trish gets an email about homeschooling, then we can just fire back this video. So it helps us kind of keep up with questions along the way. We know that not everybody in the community still has kids that are in school. So if that's you, then we're going to catch you next Sunday as we leave Glacier, head through East Montana and North Dakota and have a bit of a hail scare.
Oh,
right?
my word.
And then we end up taking the ferry and we cross over on the ferry, which is pretty cool, and arrive in Michigan.
We had never done it before, and a lot of people had questions about that.
Yeah, so there are a couple really good videos to come. And then later today, after we're done with this, I'm going to be washing the rig. So I'm pretty excited about that. So we have a lot of cool stuff coming up.
Yes.
So, and then other than that, Trisha's going to do mostly these 10 questions that you've got.
10 questions.
I'm going to, in my participation or role in this video is a lot like how it was when I was at school. I'm going to be very distracting, and I'm going to make a lot of jokes. And that was essentially how I got through school.
Yeah, I think your desk was outside, too, at one point.
So was yours.
And here we are.
And here we are. Okay.
Okay, top 10 questions. I'm going to read them off, and then you're going to know exactly what we're answering throughout this video. So the first one is, how much does it cost? How do I work and do homeschool for my kids? Do I have to devote my day, year, or life to this? Is it legal to make up my own curriculum? Does it have to be accredited? Will my kids perform better or worse than traditionally educated kids? What if my kids have special needs? That's a big one. What are the benefits of homeschooling? What is homeschooling all religiously based? That's another big question. Testing. Can I be homeschooled and still go to Harvard? That was kind of funny. So, what about sports, drama, music, the extracurriculars that school gives to kids? Because school is so much more than just books.
That's your 10?
Those are the 10.
All right. Number 1.
Okay, number 1.
How much does it cost?
It is totally free. 100%.
Wow.
The program we chose is not.
That sounds more accurate.
That sounds more accurate. Okay, so here's the thing. When we first started out, I was very nervous. I was never the mom who was like, I got this. Homeschooling's great. It never even crossed my mind that I would be a homeschooler. Oh, you were going to set a time limit because we're going to do 2 minutes each.
Yeah. That was my third rule, is to time Trish. Okay.
Time Trish.
All right, you got a little extra bonus on that one, but here we go.
I never thought I would be a homeschooler, but then this opportunity presented itself, and I was like, okay, I can handle this. This is not that big a deal. So I went to a program called K-12, and it was totally free. They send you these huge boxes of materials, like real books. You have access to real teachers, and they have like study rooms if you're located in one spot. The only thing I did not like about it is that I had to be back for testing because they have to hold you accountable.
Which was
to
hard for us
standards.
when we first hit the road because we knew where we were going to be and we were going to be gone for at least 6 months and the testing dates weren't lining up.
Right.
Okay.
And I felt the program was a bit repetitive. And so if you have any kids that are maybe on the scale of having like dyslexia or ADHD or kids that really don't like school, I found the program to be like, we're going to cover this and then we're going to talk about it 10 more times. And a couple of my kids were just like mentally exhausted. So I need to cover a subject and move on.
Yeah.
But there's so many programs. Just make sure that you know what it's going to achieve for you, and then know what the testing is. But the coolest thing is there's new charter schools that you can be involved in, and you can bang out your kids' first year of college in high school online.
I can't think of a
totally
better
free.
idea than completing all of your 101 college classes while you're in high school. That's going to save a year's worth of college tuition.
Yes.
And it's going to make college, I think, more interesting for
More
a
fun.
student because they're going to get them right into the better classes rather than just essentially repeating senior year classes.
That was my biggest mistake with Victoria. I did not realize that I could have been doing that with her.
Yeah.
She is an independent studier. You give her a mission, she gets it done. And we could have had the first year done.
Totally.
So when she went to college her first year, she was like, this is super boring. I've already done all this.
Yeah.
I can't believe you're making me do it again.
Yeah.
So we could have had all that done and she could have hit the ground running.
All right, so that's 2-minute mark. I'm just
We're
going to say
done.
one thing. Tori went to a charter school in our hometown, and that charter school allowed kids to go online because this particular school had a lot of like stellar athletes and actors and things. So Tori was actually in the same class that she was in at home, but she was going online.
Yeah.
Which is very rare, but if you have a charter school that's willing to do that, that's an option to look into.
So we have a social butterfly for a daughter, but she is not a social person doing schoolwork. And so that's another thing when you look into your programs, sometimes you log on and you have a group of kids that work together and she's like, that drives me bananas. Just
Yeah.
tell me what I need to do and I want to do it myself, but I want to go to every prom, every dance, every
Well,
graduation.
that's what I was going to say. That's the
So
advantage of this type of program is that
Yeah.
she was able to fly home and still participate in the school's activities.
Yes.
And she was still able to walk when she
And
graduated,
graduated.
which was pretty cool.
Yes.
So, and then as Trish said, the boys went to K-12, and then ultimately we found another online accredited school, and Trish will tell you why, I'm sure, when we get to that question.
Okay, so that
Okay.
is it free? Yes. Is it always free? No.
Okay.
Number 2, how do I work and homeschool?
Yes.
Very challenging. How do I work in general? So many people had to figure that out this year, how to work from home and
Yeah.
get their kids help
Yeah, it
them.
seems so productive when you first get started with it, and then over time your productivity and efficiency diminishes, and then you like, I think I'd like to go back to the office. And then you go to the office and you realize these people waste a lot of time. I'm gonna go back home. So
gonna go back home.
it's funny how that pendulum swings. Anyway,
Yes.
all right, that's my only distraction for point number 2.
So, in normal circumstances, if you were to homeschool, we used to have 3 neighbors, and I didn't understand this because, again, I didn't understand homeschooling when we were living back in Scottsdale. So, but I would see these kids walking across the street during school hours, and I was like, I wonder what's going on there. The 3 moms on our street all had advanced degrees in like math, science, biology, and they would create the day's curriculum, and they would do labs and field trips. And I mean, these are super sophisticated, bright women, and they were like creating totally tailored education
Sure.
for these 3 families. It was the coolest thing ever. So creating your own village, I think, is one way to tackle this, because sometimes you might be overwhelmed by the feeling like, okay, so I'm just going to have my kids home forever.
I thought this was a genius idea to create like your own school where now if all the kids are at one house
Yeah.
on Wednesday, that means on Monday and Tuesday the other 2 parents are working.
Yes.
So they're essentially sharing and creating a more diverse program.
Yes.
And a sense of community with those kids.
Right.
I
And
thought
then,
that-
the older kids, if maybe you needed 4 full days to work, maybe the older kids were watching the younger kids,
Yeah.
or they went on
Yeah.
a field trip together, or they did something. So all of this is to say to get creative.
Yeah.
Create your own village. If you've had 10 families together and you wanted to have one teacher, if they were all like in middle school or all in high school, something like that. I mean, that's the Montessori way, is to have older kids with younger
Yeah.
kids, so they're teaching each other, learning from each other, and learning from the teacher. So
Yeah.
anyway, get creative. It is a challenge, but it can be done.
All right. Number 3, Trish.
Is it legal to make my own curriculum? Yes. But you need to go ahead and go figure out what your state wants from you. There's all kinds of requirements. You absolutely need to know what they are. And then once you figure that out, you can make your curriculum or find what works best for your individual kids. There is an organization, I'm going to look right here, Homeschool Legal Defense, HSLDA, and we'll put the links down below.
.org.
.org.
Link done.
Yes. They're really cool. It was started in the 80s by 2 dads. They're both lawyers. And they were like, the homeschool community needs some representation, and we're going to give it to them. So anyway, since then, it's grown and developed into a huge resource. So if you go to that website, then you can start to understand what your state wants from you. It's not the end-all, be-all, but it is a wonderful place to start.
Okay, number 4, Trish. does the school need to be accredited?
No! That's the simple answer. The school does not need to be accredited. And if you find a school that has accreditation, it doesn't mean that it's the most amazing school.
Yeah.
So you can't just take that accreditation and say, this is the perfect school. One thing that I've realized is that instead of looking for accreditation, you need to look for, does this school speak the language of my student's next step? And what I mean by that is some people want to take a year off from high school, but then they want to go back. So the things that they're doing during that year, is that going to translate well to the school? Will the school understand what you did? So for Carson, we wanted him to go to Culver, but the program that I was working with him on wasn't going to give him what he needed for Culver to say yes. So then we found that accredited school. The school could understand what I was communicating through the courses. So are they speaking the same language? And another way to break this down is in college, when you're filling out your applications, they want certain things from you. And so are your school requirements that you're doing now meeting the needs of the kid's next step?
Would you say that depending on the school that a child wanted to go to, that an accredited high school would make that step easier?
I found that the accreditation process that Whitmore is where the kids went before Culver. I found that they did a really good job communicating to the next step what they were doing, what the requirements were. It wasn't just like you're taking science. It was science and then a subheading of what kind of science and then a description and then credits. And so the school that he was going to understood what he did.
So I will say that, the reason that Carson goes to Culver Academy is because he wants to go to the Air Force Academy. And the reason he wants to go to the Air Force Academy is because we toured the campus on our travels.
Yeah.
Had we not taken this trip and done and visited there, I don't think he would have, that seed would have been planted. And so that's just one area where travel can kind of expose your kids to new ideas and change the trajectory of their path in life, which we love. We asked the United States Air Force how many kids were accepted from a homeschool curriculum, and the percentage, they were not anti by any means. They were very open to it,
Totally.
and very receptive to it.
Yes. And
But
they will be even more.
People's intentions have very little. They mean very little to me. So I say, how many? Very low.
Very low.
It's very low. And so what we found is that if you have a child that wants to go to a Ivy League school, or the United States Air Force Academy is like the third best public school, right? You're going to have to be really organized.
Yes.
And show very. Let me rephrase. We were not the type of parents that were going to have the records to communicate to that school that he was educated in the way that he wanted to be. So it was all us. We looked at our skills, our environment, our lifestyle, and we said there's no way that our homeschool
that we are successfully going to communicate what they want.
Therefore,
to hear.
we decided to. Carson wanted to go to Culver, and then in order to get him into Culver, we found Whitmore Academy, which was an accredited online school. So I would say, just to summarize, accreditation is not necessary, but it also depends, as Trish said, what is the next step.
And accreditation does not go hand in hand with the fact that it's the best school ever.
That's true.
Yes. So anyway, I just want to make that clear too. But it was for me something to look at because I knew that they had to take extra steps to get that accreditation.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Number 5.
Okay, number 5. Will my kids perform better or worse than traditionally educated kids?
Depends on the kid.
Totally depends on the kid. Totally depends on the kid. But the U.S. Department of Education actually did a study on this. And in elementary school years, homeschooled kids are usually 1 year advanced than their peers at school. And by the time they get to their secondary school and high school, they're 4 years ahead. That means they're taking AP courses and things like that.
And who did this study? The U.S. Department of Education?
U.S. Department of Education.
I just did a study in my head 10 seconds ago with our 3 kids, and here were the results. Tori would perform absolutely the same if she was in online school or homeschool. Carson absolutely performs better at school with structure, with a bar, something like Carson will exceed the bar. You just have to tell him where the bar is. In absence of a bar, there is no bar.
There's nothing.
He does better in school.
Yeah.
Caleb, 100% unequivocally does better in a homeschool environment than at school. There's there's just too many obstacles for someone like Caleb at school.
Like sitting in a chair.
Yeah, there you go. And plus he wants to know, what's the purpose of this? What are we doing? What are we doing?
Right.
Like
the why has to be answered before the work will get done.
Yeah.
Every
so anyway,
time.
that's my study.
Yes. so yes, your kids can, outperform. It really, again, kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the last question. What standard are we setting?
Yes.
So if we're not setting a high standard, they're not achieving that high standard.
Yes.
Right? If we prioritize travel over
And PE.
and PE over other things. So, and all joking aside, we do prioritize reading about business, creative thinking, solution-based thinking. What do you think? How are you going to get through this problem? That's our main focus in life. What do you think about this problem that's going on in real life? How would you solve it?
Yeah. And you can tailor the education toward the desires that your kids have.
Yes.
So because Caleb is so focused on business that when we're driving, we're able to listen to, there's a great podcast by NPR called How I Made This.
Oh,
and it's
so
the
good.
stories of entrepreneurs and the obstacles that they overcome bringing products to market. Well, what?
The funniest part of listening to that with Caleb is that we have to pause it like 17 times.
And then we have to explain so many things. And then we'll be talking about accounting and like cost of goods sold and cost of marketing and chart of accounts and all sorts of things. So, I mean, it's like a 1 hour podcast is a 3 hour conversation, but that's what he's interested in.
Right.
And, it just wouldn't be possible if we didn't take it on like this.
So in psychology, they talk about people, when I was studying for my social work degree, they talk about people as puzzle pieces, and we are one big puzzle. We have all these different pieces, and emotionally, with our intelligence, different things that are, our life history, things like that. The best part about homeschool is that you can focus on each individual piece. It's not like you've graduated 5th grade. You're this far in this study, you're this far in this. There's room for growth in this area, and you have the time to develop your kids' character, their education, all at different rates. It doesn't matter what grade you're in.
All right, what's the next?
What if my kids have special needs?
Okay,
that is a big spectrum, special needs. So for us, we did have one student with an IEP, Individualized Education Plan, and when we first left, I was concerned that if I didn't keep that up, then he wouldn't get the things that he needed, so which is like extra time on tests, things like that. So it is very important to stay in contact with your district to make sure that you still get your benefits for your kids. So, and I can't really speak in broad or, in specific terms. I can only speak in broad terms on this because every state is so different. But keeping up on that formal paperwork, going in and having the meetings, go to your local school and say, who do I need to speak with in regards to this if I do homeschool? And if you're not getting the answers that you need, then just continue to move up the ladder. And if you need to speak to the principal, speak to the principal, because you have to make sure that you have the appropriate paperwork. Services are given through paperwork. That's what I've learned. And if you do not have the appropriate documentation, you're not going to get what your child needs and deserves. So that's as far as I can really speak to that. But just because your kids have special needs does not mean that by homeschooling them, they're null and void.
Yeah, I like it.
That's it. What are the benefits of homeschooling? I think you can answer this.
Well, I think we already have in a roundabout way, talking about the fact that we're able to tailor the education to each individual child.
Yes,
is one. I think the second is that they get exposed to different ways of thinking and meeting lots of different people, and so it accelerates their emotional maturity as well as their intellectual maturity significantly. Tailoring, exposure, what else? Well,
I think one of the things we're talking about school-age children, so really we're talking about like 6-year-olds to 18-year-olds, and if you break that down in half, like elementary and middle high school, and so in elementary, you're really working on figuring out, hey, I did this, and you can see success, like through your peer group. You're like, oh, that worked, that didn't work, oh, that was right, that was wrong. You're learning so much because of your peers. So I do think it's important to add that into your homeschool, whether it's being part of a group or being part of a sport or doing something that's outside of just being at home.
Gotcha.
So because that is that is an actual developmental need.
Yeah. In fact, I just thought of another one.
Yes.
And that is if you can study, or if you study some of the Montessori principles, there is a strong connection between nature and a child's development.
Yes.
And this benefit, so to speak, goes beyond what you're able to see. A lot of people, when they have kids that are young, they say, well, I don't know if I want to go RVing because their kids aren't going to remember it. There's a lot that they're retaining about being in nature and experiencing this type of lifestyle, even if it was for a very short period when they're young, that they may not remember when they're older, but had a significant impact on their development and their processing. So don't be too linear in the thinking of black and white as it relates to
like, are
benefits.
they going to remember this memory or understand what we're doing? Probably not. But it's going to come out in other ways.
Yeah.
The other, to conclude with that whole spectrum of where kids are in the developmental age, when you reach middle school and high school, one of the big parts of development is identity, understanding your identity versus your role. And then so having that opportunity to either service the community, to work with adults, to understand, like, what am I good at?
Yeah.
And really get that feedback from people outside of your mom and dad.
Gotcha.
So that is an actual developmental stage in that grade.
It brings up the point that if you are a parent and you are tailoring your education to your kids, to look at what are the developmental stages of children's at each, or of a child at each age.
Yes.
And tailor it to that. I'm sure the schools do this, but then the question is, how watered down does it get when you have to work with an entire class?
Right.
Whereas if it was your own student, you can say, geez, they should be at this development stage, but it looks like they're actually ahead of it because you're able to.
Yes, you can see. Yeah, you're going toe to toe.
Anyway,
when I was
these are my random unaccredited thoughts.
Unaccredited thoughts. Very funny. Very quickly, I used to do speech therapy for kids with autism, not because I was a speech therapist, but I was training to be before I moved into social work.
And she's fluent in sign, which is why those hands are flying
all
everywhere. People
over
say,
the
would
time.
Trish be able to talk if you duct tape her hands to a chair? Probably not, but
Probably
she
not.
is fluent in sign.
Well, I was. If you don't use it, you lose it. Anyway, going back to kids with autism, one of the main goals for the parents was to mainstream the kids. And to be able to reach that goal was so monumental in their development, because it wasn't about books, it was about social. And so that piece is, I know for a fact, that's one of the main concerns of people moving from regular school to homeschool. But you can achieve that in so many ways. So just going out and being in different, like, groups through sports, groups through youth groups, and just have it. Your peer group doesn't have to be 30 kids in a class.
No.
Remember, they usually end up having a
Look
group
at our
of
peer
friends.
group. Look at how small our peer group is. I mean, really, as an adult, I mean, other than people who are crazy extroverted.
Yes.
It's a handful of friends.
It's a handful of friends. So you can get that social experience through your handful of friends.
Yeah.
So anyway.
All right.
Okay. Is all homeschooling religiously based? Do you want to start that over again?
Okay, there we go. I'm ready.
Is all homeschooling religiously based? Absolutely not. There's secular, there's religious. You can go whatever route you choose. If you go through the state.
Amen. Just kidding. Okay, see, distracting. All right, go ahead.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's the easy answer. I think we took enough time on other questions.
Okay,
That's the easy answer.
All right.
Okay, no,
It's
it absolutely does not have to be. Testing. Can you be homeschooled and still go to Harvard? We touched on that with the U.S. Air Force Academy. Absolutely. And they have little sections, if your child knows where they want to go to school. If, like, let's say they're in middle school, high school, the last 2 years of high school are really important. Where do I want to go? You can go, and most colleges will say homeschooled. And there's a whole nother section. Being able to go to those colleges' websites and finding out what they want from you. And again, what's their language? How do you communicate with them successfully to show them that you have, in fact, been doing the work? Don't be scared to be homeschooled and to go into an Ivy League school or a contending school. It's really about what you're doing with those high school years.
Now, the topic for number 9 is testing. And I did find it particularly interesting when we first got started that Carson took his SAT test in Great Falls, Montana, just before crossing the border to go to Calgary. Tori ended up taking her SAT test in Lake Tahoe. I remember specifically studying with her in the Starbucks of
She had to take it twice.
North Star.
She had to take it twice. So one of them was in Beverly Hills too.
Yeah, so it is kind of interesting to be traveling to certain places because your kids have to take a test. I thought that was kind of
It's really cool.
It
So
is cool.
this year SAT tests were canceled, which is
Okay.
very challenging.
Yeah.
But normally you go on the SAT website and they'll tell you when you have to register by, and they'll tell you where you can take the test. You can take it anywhere in the United States. You just need to have your school code. So don't worry about that.
Yeah.
You can get your kids tested and get them
Gotcha.
ready to rock and roll. Okay, let's bring this home. Let's land the plane.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to talk about what about sports, drama, music. School is so much more, again, than just books.
Okay.
So, again, if you go back to that website with the Lawyers Homeschool Legal Association, they will share with you what states allow you to use your public school for sports.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So in Arizona, not all states do this. Actually, very few. I think it's like 20 states allow kids to use their public school. In Arizona, you're allowed to be part of the drama department.
Okay.
You're allowed to do sports. There's just requirements. They need to see that you are, in fact, doing all your schoolwork, that because you're being held to the same standards as the kids in public
Sure.
school. Like,
Yeah.
if you're getting a D in a class,
Yeah.
they wouldn't let you play a football game. They're not going to let a homeschool
You know,
kid.
I can't help but
get
to
away
think
with that,
though
too.
that some of these real elite athletes are traveling so much for these competitions. It makes me wonder that if you have a kid that's that good, that you could actually find a school that has a team that caters to a alternative education.
Yeah.
And two things would happen. A, you could travel. If you work remotely, you could go travel and incorporate their travel schedule into your, or their games in your travel schedule. But then you could also just change schools like that.
Right.
So, but I mean, it depends on the level.
Well, okay, so a couple things about the sports segment. So first, we are sharing that you can, in fact, be involved in sports teams and things like that if you're homeschooled. But what if you're traveling? So I always want to remind people when I'm typing out emails to respond to questions, it's not end-all be-all to travel full-time.
Yeah.
It's not. So, if you want to be home for a season, we know one family, their kids are into baseball. They travel, they homeschool their kids, and then they come home because they're competitive. So they're not doing it through the school. They're doing it through league sports and things. They come home for that season. They have their RV.
Yeah.
So then they use it to go travel. Like, remember when Caleb was part of competitive gymnastics
Yeah.
and they're like, we're going to be in Las Vegas and California. I was like, gee whiz, that's expensive.
Gee whiz.
Gee whiz. But no, really, geez, that's expensive. So if you have a rig and you have a competitive athlete, those two go hand in hand.
Yeah, for sure.
They should literally, if you have a competitive athlete, they should say, just go get an RV.
Yeah, totally.
So that you have your own food, your own bed, and
Yes.
that keeps your kids healthy because you're eating, you're not eating takeout food.
Yeah.
You're not in the way of a bunch of germs in a hotel, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, so as far as sports are concerned, it's not the end-all be-all to be full-time RVers. You can RV around your kids' schedule.
We've never really advocated, there's construction going on next door. We've never really advocated full-time RVing. I know we are full-time, but I as Trish says, memories are not reserved for the full-time. And now that we have the KYD cabin in Flagstaff, Arizona, and when we're home in the wintertime, I think we're able to appreciate the things that we have when we're home, like a dishwasher and fast internet
Laundry
and things
machine.
like this. And then we start being excited for what we're going to have on the road.
Yes.
And so we really kind of like the yin and the yang of that.
Use your RV to
Serve you.
To make your life even better.
Yeah.
So anyway, so just process that too. So if your kids were homeschooled, but you could still be home for their sports season.
Yes.
So very cool. And then as far as like drama and things like that, there's usually a season for those things. Even if your kids are involved in acting, in music theater, things like that, there's usually a certain time during the year. And again, you can go travel and then come back. And especially if that is like at the Christmas season, then you come back for the holidays and then you go travel the rest of the time because they're homeschooled.
Yeah.
So making the coconuts move the way you need them to is really how you process, okay, so I got through that hurdle, now what's the next hurdle, But
All right, you've got a bonus question or a bonus answer?
oh yes, bonus round. So what have we done, what worked, what didn't, and I really think it's important to address this question: is it selfish to take your kids out of school to go travel?
I know that when we first hit the road, in that very first video, when we got that flat tire, and people kind of, were new to the channel, and that's kind of what they said, like, how selfish.
Yeah.
for us to take our kids out of school. There was so much negative
You're
feedback.
ruining your kids' lives.
Ruining your kids' education. Good job ruining your kids' education. I'll always remember that one.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. We don't get those comments anymore because I think the channel's been around for so long. I think our kids, a lot of people have seen our kids grow up right in front of them, and so I think they've seen some of the results,
the rewards
of it, and so we don't get that anymore. But you will when you first start.
The ones that will hurt the worst is people that are the closest to you, or hearing that someone closest to you said that through someone else.
Yeah, which is probably where it's going to come from.
It will sting. But just know that if you are actively looking at each one of your kids and saying, what do they need? Because that's the best part about this, is I can say, Victoria is this kind of learner, Carson is this, Caleb is that. And they need these certain things. If you're able to do that, no, hands down, the answer is no. It is not selfish. It's actually helping them.
Let me add a little Dr. Phil moment to this segment. It's interesting, if you're feeling a little insecure, or you think that you might actually be, you might actually be selfish doing this, that insecurity will come out potentially is looking for some sort of approval from maybe friends or family. And there's kind of a phrase called what you resist persists. So you will inevitably, if you're feeling this way, actually generate that type of feedback because you're looking
in the way you ask a question.
Yeah, because you're actually looking for approval. So if it's something you've thought about and you're going to do, build a plan and then do it. Don't try to get approval from your parents or your in-laws or your friends or what you're doing, and don't worry about that. You don't need approval. You've made the decision. Do it. Because in that approval process will create doubt and uncertainty, and then you're going to have to go through that whole. There's a waste of emotion.
And life is all about adjustments.
Yeah.
So you're not like casting the stone that's going to stay the same way always. You're saying this year we're taking it on like this.
Yes.
And then we're going to learn, and we're going to grow, and we're going to change.
Yeah. And we feel the same way.
Learn, grow, and change. Learn, grow, and change. All the
Constantly adjusting, and we feel the same way about RVing. Once you get on the road, if it's not working, you're gonna adjust it. It's very easy to feel like you're making this lifelong decision. It's gonna be like this forever. And what if I don't like it? Well, if you don't like it, you're gonna shift. You're gonna adjust. If you don't like boondocking, you're not gonna boondock anymore. If you don't like RV parks, you're not gonna be at RV parks anymore. If you don't like the lifestyle, you're gonna come back. You will not regret making a change in your life. It might be hard. You might wonder what you're doing. You might feel like you're crazy. You might not even have liked it as much as you thought you were going to like it, but I promise you're never going to regret it.
Yes.
Because...
Here's the thing, though, and I think this helped us a lot. We said we're doing this, whatever it was, for 6 months. Yeah. And we're going to, at the end of it, reevaluate. And Mark touched on this before. We told Victoria, if you want to go back for your senior year, we're going back. And we gave our kids authority.
That is one of the way a lot of people write in. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
People write in there like, how do I get I got 4 kids, or I got 2 kids and one's not on board. That's how we got them on board, is we created parameters and we allowed them to feel like they had some control. Yes.
Well, and they knew that we would keep our word.
Yeah.
So we weren't just taking them and rolling. The other thing that might be helpful for families that have kids that are not on board, and you're going to have to figure this out for your family and what works. But I do think that having a phone and having contact with your friends is helpful. Not to the point where they're on FaceTime calls and they're crying because they miss their friends. But, hey, I'm doing this. You can send postcards. Like, have a way for them to stay in contact with the people that are most important to them.
Yeah.
And let them know in advance, oh my gosh, this is what homesickness feels like. This is what it feels like when you hear about the fact that your friend had a party and you weren't able to go. Because I feel like that, right? I know that some of my girlfriends are having a birthday party. I'm like, oh, I want to be there. But I have coping mechanisms, and I know what they are, and so I do them, and then I know that it's my responsibility to follow through. But a kid doesn't.
Yeah, and
so
also
helping them through that.
Know that homesickness. It's amazing how fast you recover from it when you're home. I've heard
wait a minute.
I've heard from people who are like, oh my gosh, I was homesick for the longest time, and then like 2 days later, they're like, okay, I'm ready to go again.
Yeah. so it's that balance.
So we use everything on Southwest Airlines credit card, and even more so than the videos portray. There's people flying all over the place.
Right, because we have miles.
Yeah, we have miles. And so, like, even right now, we need to fly Carson back to go get his driver's license. And then we'll fly. Tori came out to Glacier, and we got to see Tori at Glacier. And so, even if there's things we need to go back and do at the cabin, we can come home. And then when Trish is there, she'll go out with her friends and things. There are ways to kind of fulfill that homesickness without like
Breaking
changing
the
everything.
bank.
And breaking the bank, yeah, sure, because
Yeah.
you're gonna have friends pick you up at the airport, and so you
Right.
use miles, fly home, go out to dinner, check on the house, or check on friends, and then fly back.
Right.
I
So-
think it's so interesting how myopically focused you can get about RV life. I remember
Right.
when Trish and I took, after season 1, for my 40th birthday, we went down to Mexico.
Uh-huh.
And someone was like, well, you're not full-time. If you can leave for a 2-week trip, or what, we were gone for like 5
10
days.
10 days.
Then that you're not full-time RVing. I'm like, okay, well then we're not full-time
Okay,
RVing.
you go ahead and decide what
Right.
we're doing.
So-
This is what we're doing.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, so it's just like just make RVing work for you. Have the RV serve you.
Yes.
Don't fall into this trap of having it to be the way that other people want it to be, or you're not doing it right. You're
Yes.
doing it just fine.
Just fine.
The way you're doing it.
Mhm. And there is a huge community of super smart people that have dove into the deep end of homeschooling.
Oh, yeah.
So you can find answers. I'm really hoping that people will put down in the comments curriculum that you've used that you've really enjoyed. This is a safe place to leave comments about what worked and what didn't. If we're being solution based
Yes.
and all of that. So there's so many. You are not alone. I
No.
think that was important. The first time I sat behind the computer, I'm like, am I making the right choice?
I know.
What am I
So
doing?
much doubt to overcome.
Where am I going to make sure that these kids get properly educated? And then I started realizing I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
And moms, I mean, I'm sure dads too, but moms are all about like, this is what's
Yeah.
happening and this is what's working. You'll find blogs and forums. So you're going to find that type of person on a forum, in a blog, things like that. So this is not the end all be all conversation. This is just meant to answer any spots that you may have questions and to
Yeah.
help in your confidence, knowing that there's so many people that have done it before
In
you.
a very concise way, because we were 2 minutes on the mark with every one of these things. All right,
No,
if you want
we
more
were.
information, because it's like this probably isn't something that we're going to do another video about.
No.
And so keepyourdaydream.com/homeschool, and that way Trish can make updates, and as you
Yes.
get feedback from this video,
Oh,
you can,
as you
can add
teach
to it.
me new things, I
Yeah.
can put it right into
So
the
that'll
blog.
be our resource that we send, so we get emails even a year from now about,
Yes.
hey, what do you guys do for homeschool? We can send a link to this video with that blog, and all the information will live there. And then
Perfect.
next Sunday, we go back to a couple more travel videos, and then we got a how-to video, and then back to travel videos. It's been a cool season.
Yeah.
We're very much enjoying it. Flexible, lots of changes.
Yes, we have
But-
to remain flexible
but
all
fun.
the time.
Yeah, and then we'll give you an update on the whole Canada situation, because,
Yes.
we're in the early stages now of, maybe rerouting.
Rethinking about all of that.
Yeah, so we got all that going on.
So anyway, we love that you're here, and if you have questions for us, throw them down in that comment area.
And we'll catch you next Sunday at 7 Central, as always.